All right, so we're going to add to what we did yesterday. So yesterday, what you did is you took one of the equations, plugged it into the other equation. Like in this case, it says x equals, so you took the y plus 6, plugged it in for x. This says y equals, so you took the 2x minus 1 and plugged it in for y. And all you did was solve, and you got, in this case, you got y to equal 2. In this one, you got x to equal negative 0.5. So today, what you're going to do is really what solving systems is all about. So what solving systems, or what we are going to be doing this whole entire unit, is we are going to be solving for coordinates. So yesterday, you did kind of half the work. So substitution is one of the ways to get the coordinate. And really, ultimately, what we're going to be working our way to is graphing. And when we are taking a look at these equations here, we are trying to figure out, if I were to graph this equation and if I were to graph this equation, where would they cross? And that's what we're figuring out. We're figuring out the point where they cross. The story problems that we're going to be chatting about kind of make sense as to why you kind of need to know this. I could probably argue that this is the one thing that really you could use in life. So for those who are already asking, like, when will I ever need this? You may do this in a different way. You probably wouldn't set it up as an equation, but you would do this in your head somehow. So substitution is one of the methods that we are going to do. So you did, like I said, half the battle yesterday. So you're always going to be taking an expression or an equation, plugging it into the other equation to go through and solve and get, in this case, y to equal 2. Now, the only thing that we're going to add to this today is, since we are solving for a point on a graph is an x and a y. So that's why I said you did half the battle yesterday. Like for A here, we solved and we got y to equal 2, which is great, but now we need x. And that's where this is kind of the easy part. So you did the hard part yesterday. You're going to take that y equals 2, or that 2, and you're going to substitute it back in to solve for x. So I always substitute back in to the equation that I used to substitute into the previous one. So if I take 2 and plug her in right here, I get x equals 2 plus 6. And 2 plus 6 is 8. So there's my x and my y. So when you write your answers, or when you type your answers into GoFormative, you're going to have to put them in as a coordinate, parenthesis, x, comma, y. No spacing, just x, comma, y. And that's it. So like I said, yesterday you did the hard work. So like for this one, if x equals negative 0.5, I'm going to take that negative 0.5 and plug it in right there. And I have y equals 2 times negative 0.5 minus 1. So I get y equals 2 times negative 0.5 is negative 1 minus 1. Negative 1 minus 1, if you know your math really well, mental math really well, use it. If not, grab a calculator. This is not 0, it's negative 2. So then when you go to write your answer, you do x, comma, y. So the only additional thing is now you're plugging that value back in. So just be careful with that. So the other thing that you're going to see today, and I wanted to point this out, is you're going to see some problems, only a couple, just because we're going to ease you into it. You're going to see a couple of problems that, like this. This is actually number 5 on your assignment, so I'm giving you a free answer, I guess I could say. And if I wanted you to solve using substitution, you might get a little lost here, because we're used to seeing one of the equations already solved for a variable. This one doesn't have that. So this is where you have to use your brain a little bit. And you've got to take a look at it and say, okay, I have to use substitution, which means I need to get one of these equations with the variable by itself. So when you are in this situation, you're going to think about these steps. Step 1, you're going to solve one equation for either x or y. And it could be one or the other. Sometimes it's easier to solve one of the equations for x. Sometimes it's easier to solve one of the equations for y. So if I take a look here, this bottom equation, and really honestly what I do, I always look at the coefficients or the numbers in front of my variables. So this bottom equation has a coefficient of 5 here. This has a coefficient of 3 here. So ultimately, if I were to solve for one of these variables, I'd have to divide by 5 or divide by 3, and ain't nobody got time for that. So up here, this one has a coefficient of 2. Dividing by 2 is usually kind of nice, but this one doesn't have anything in front of it. So all I would have to do to get y by itself is just bring this 2x over. So if I take this 2x plus y equals -2, and if I solve for y, all I would do is subtract 2x over. And I would have y equals -2x minus 2. So now these are my two equations right here that I would use for substitution. I don't want to put a negative there, that's going to be confusing. So after you've solved one of your equations for x or y, and don't worry if this doesn't make complete sense right now, you will be able to practice it today, but you also you could get more practice tomorrow too. And if this is really confusing, I'm going to highly recommend that you show up to our Google Meet on Thursday so we can kind of walk through more examples. So step 2 then would be to plug that equation into the other one. So I'm going to take the -2x minus 2 and substitute it in for y. So I'm going to take the y away and I'm going to substitute -2x minus 2. So now I have 5x plus 3. Remember, when you substitute in, you take the y out, and the -2x minus 2 gets plopped in, and that equals -8. After you plug it in, now you're going to solve for the variable that you have in your equation. And look here, I have only x's, which means I'm going to end up solving for x. So first thing I need to do is distribute. Bring down the 5x. Positive 3 times a -2 is a -6x. Positive 3 times a -2 is a -6 equals -8. So then I'm going to use my algebra skills to solve here. I'm going to combine like terms. 5x's minus 6x's is -1x. Bring down the -6, bring down the equals, bring down the -8. Then I'm going to add 6. -1x equals -2. You cannot leave it as a -1, so then you're going to divide by -1. Yes, these are a decent amount more work. You're not going to see a ton of them. Don't freak out, but you need to know how to do it. So -2 divided by -1 is a +2. And I didn't give you many of this type to do because I know that they take more time. Now that you have x to equal 2, plug it, okay, so whoops, solve for the variable. And then you're going to have to plug that number in and solve for the other variable. So we had x equals 2. I'm going to take that 2, and I know this is confusing, guys, so just bear with me. Now we're going to take that 2, and we're going to plug it in right there. So we have y equals -2 times 2 minus 2. It's a lot of 2's. Probably should have picked a problem that didn't have so many 2's. So then you get y equals -2 times 2 is -4. -4 minus 2 is -6. So there's my x, there's my y, so my actual answer is 2, -6. Look at this problem. I know, it's a lot. And look at how many different places you could go wrong. The good news is that this is on a video, so pause it, rewind it, watch it again. Pause it, rewind it, watch it again. Take this right here, put it off to the side, maybe write this down and see if you can do it yourself. It definitely is going to be something that you have to practice. This isn't something that all of a sudden the heavens are going to open up and you know what to do. If you are really struggling with this, you're going to need to reach out. On all of your tests and quizzes, you're going to have to show me your work. No work gets you no credit this semester because we are making sure you know the algebra. This material right here pops up on the SAT every single year. So we need to make sure that you know what you're doing. I'll be available tomorrow morning for a Google Meet from 10 to 10:25. So if you need more examples, don't hesitate to reach out. Good luck. And like I said, you don't have many of these. It's more like the other ones that we kind of did the day before. But don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help.